finally, Kamala Harris sent us a love letter. To you, that might have been a policy document. I read that as a love letter from Kamala Harris to black men who need some love.
And for those people watching on television, the Economic Club of Chicago and Bloomberg both invited Vice President Harris to a similar interview about her economic plans that she has declined so far. And second, just to set some parameters about this interview, which I was just discussing with President Trump, we're going to focus on business and the economy. And that's partly because this is a business audience, but it's also because voters insist that the economy is the main issue that matters when they vote.
Why didn't they address issues or they valued us before this started to become an issue and Obama decided to put his foot in his mouth in the first place? That's number one. But number two, if you go down and you look at it, it becomes even more disrespectful because it's almost like, oh, we're going to make sure that we legalize marijuana laws because black men are disproportionately affected. Oh, we're going to give you loans that's forgivable. I thought that was grants. But then at the same time, instead of making sure that we're safer, that we have opportunities, that we have lower taxes, that we can get the jobs that we want, they want to dangle more fruit in front of us, low-hanging fruit, in order to sell us on scraps, in order to get us back into the Democratic plantation. It's not going to work. It's just more disrespectful.
Black men who need some respect, black men who need some concern and some care and consideration. You know, we need some mamala from Kamala, and we got that. We stood on business. We said we wanted to hear something. Everybody else is getting something. What are we going to get? And she came with a love letter of support for our work, our wealth, and our health.
Obviously, Kamala Harris recognizes that she's either losing right now by a pretty wide margin or very, very likely to lose on November 5th because her and her campaign are employing very, very different strategies than what they started with. And they've entered into something that a lot of the media is actually calling the doom spiral, which I think perfectly describes what's actually happening. You know, her handlers know without a doubt that letting her go out and talk can only lead to disaster. But they also know that the basement strategy just isn't working. So they figure that they literally have nothing more to lose by putting her out there and letting her talk. It's either going to work or it's not going to work. And I think their hope is to basically control where she goes as much as possible. And while Donald Trump is going to the Economic Club of Chicago, which is not exactly a friendly place, and I'm going to show you some of the great moments that came from that, he's doing that. And he's also holding town halls focused on women's issues and women's concerns. Kamala's not doing any of that. She's not doing anything impactful. She's not doing anything actually important at all. I mean, she's not taking any real risks, right? She's just going on race hustling talk shows and going on Howard Stern and The View. And I'm going to give her credit. You know, today she goes on Fox News, which I imagine is going to be a complete and total disaster that I just cannot wait to watch. But first, before she does that, she has to go pander.
My question to you is, what's your stance on reparations? We all know that America became great, you know, off the backs of free black labor. How progressive are you on making it a priority and righting America's wrongs? It's understood that you are running for president for all people of America. Asking for specifics for black communities doesn't mean don't do for others, but black Americans are heavily asked to vote Democrat in every election for over half a century with very little in return. What are your plans to address these very important issues and change that narrative?
Thank you, Zeke.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you for your work. So to your point, yes, I am running to be a president for all Americans. That being said, I do have clear eyes about the disparities that exist and the context in which they exist, meaning history, to your point. So my agenda, well, first of all, on the point of reparations, it has to be studied. There's no question about that. And I've been very clear about that position. In terms of my immediate plan, I will tell you a few of the following. One, as it relates to the economy, which is a lot of what you have addressed. Look, I grew up in the middle class. My mother worked hard, raised me and my sister, and by the time I was in high school, she was able to afford our.
I think what she meant to say was there is zero chance that reparations is ever going to happen, right? And it's honestly, it's actually kind of sad, man, that these politicians, these people like Kamala Harris, they can't just be honest with people, man. I mean, they just keep saying some variation of, we've got to study it. We just have to study it. They've been studying it. I mean, the last guy who said that they needed to study it was Gavin Newsom. So they studied it. They funneled millions into studying it in California, and they gave him actual recommendations based on the study. And then he said, hey, thanks for the good work, but no thanks. Reparations are not going to happen. And now Kamala is running the same damn scam. I mean, just literally they take advantage of people, and all it is a big virtue signal, man. She is not going to commit to reparations, but that doesn't mean she's not going to try and buy some votes. I mean, her plan for black men is free money and legal weed. She's serious about it too. I mean, this is who these people are, right? But she hopes that you're not going to pay attention to any of that because democracy. Apparently the stakes are just too high to care about anything except for stopping Donald Trump.
Got a couple more questions. I want to get my man Eric Thomason here because we only got like a few more minutes. But I do want to say President Obama was out there last week waving his finger at black men. When are Liz Cheney and Hillary Clinton going to wave their finger at white women? When are Bill Clinton and Joe Biden going to wave their finger at white men? Because 52% of white women voted for Trump in 2016. 55% voted for Trump in 2020. They all voted against their own interests. When the finger waving going to start at them?
Well, thank you for highlighting that. I do have the support of over 200 Republicans who worked for various administrations, including everyone going back to Ronald Reagan, to the Bushes, to John McCain and Mitt Romney, and including Liz Cheney. And I'm very proud to have her support. And I believe that many of them who may have voted for Trump before are supporting me because they know the stakes are so high in terms of our very democracy and rule of law. And
so the finger wagging should start today or tomorrow.
Well, I think what is happening is that we are all working on reminding people of what is at stake, and that is very important.
What can you even say to that? John McCain apparently endorses Kamala Harris this time around because the stakes are just that high, right? But this is who these people are, man. These are the kinds of questions that the Kamala Harris team, the campaign, is comfortable with her answering. Basically, they're going to ask her, what empty promises are you going to make to black men, right? And what the hell's up with white women? I mean, she didn't even understand that Leonard was telling her in the nicest possible way that Barack Obama scolding black men is just not a good look. But she didn't get it. But that's the point. I mean, even that was done in the nicest way possible. And just juxtapose that with the fact that Donald Trump sat down with hostile reporters in a hostile environment to talk about something serious, to actually hash out his economic agenda. And honestly, there's no way to honestly compare these two candidates. They are not even playing the same game.
Things, if you look at it. Number one is for protection of the companies that we have here and the new companies that will move in, because we're going to have thousands of companies coming into this country. We're going to grow it like it's never grown before. And we're going to protect them when they come in because we're not going to have somebody undercut them.
And yes, you're going to find some people who will gain from individual tariffs. The overall effect could be massive.
I agree. It's going to have a massive effect, positive effect. It's going to be a positive, not a negative.
Well, just
let me just I know how committed you are to this, and it must be hard for you to spend 25 years talking about tariffs as being negative, and then have somebody explain to you that you're totally wrong. It'll have a negative. It will have. I'll go a step further.
40
if
million,
you don't
40
do
million,
this,
President
this
Trump,
country has no
40
chance.
million jobs is a lot of jobs to rely on.
They're
trade.
all coming back.
Those are 40 million jobs. Those are 40 million jobs in America that rely on trade.
Are you ready? John Deere, great company. They announced about a year ago they're going to build big plants outside of the United States, right? They're going to build them in Mexico.
And you threatened them with tariffs and they stopped.
That's right. I said, if John Deere builds those plants and not selling anything into the United States, they just announced yesterday they're probably not going to build the plants, okay? I kept the jobs here.
Critics say your tariffs will end up being like a national sales tax.
Nope.
Because
the countries
if you have, America at the moment has $3 trillion worth of imports, you're going to add tariffs to every single one of them. That is going to push up the cost for all those people who want to buy foreign goods.
No. What's going
that is
to
just
happen?
Simple mathematics, President Trump.
It's not. Yeah, it is, but not the way you figure it. I was always very good at mathematics.
Yes.
Let me tell you, you're saying $3 trillion.
That's $3 trillion worth of imports.
And they don't have to pay. And if, by the higher the tariff, the more likely it is to have them come into the
higher the tariff, the more you're going to put on the value of that piece, those goods, the higher people are going to have to pay in shops.
Ready? The higher the tariff, the more likely it is that the company will come into the United States and build a factory in the United States so it doesn't have to pay the tariff.
That will take many, as you know, that will take many years.
In fact, I'll tell you, you know, there's another theory is that the tariff, you make it so high, so horrible, so obnoxious that they'll come right away. When I do the 10%, 10% is really, first of all, 10% when you collect it is hundreds of billions of dollars. The numbers that you're talking, all reducing our deficit. But really, so there's two ways of looking at a tariff. You can do it as a money-making instrument, or you can do it as something to get the companies. Now, if you want the companies to come in, the tariff has to be a lot higher than 10%, because 10% is not enough. Guys, they're not going to do it for 10. But you make a 50% tariff, they're going to come in. And it's been a tough business. It was a great business many years ago. And I would not let U.S. steel be sold to Japanese, by the way. It's psychologically, I think it would be
That's the Nippon steel, as you know.
Yeah, I wouldn't let it be sold. But I would stop it if it hasn't been completed by the time I'm president, because I think it sets a horrible tone. But I had a lot to do with steel. We were going to lose all our steel companies because China, as you remember, was dumping steel at levels that nobody's ever seen before. And I put a 50% tax on that and a tariff on that, all dumped steel. And it was also bad steel. It was what they call dirty steel. It wasn't good steel, which is a bad thing for structural components of buildings and planes and things like that. They were dumping crap into our country. And I put a 50% tariff. I started at 25, I raised it to 50 because the 25 didn't quite do it. I raised it to 50 and that did it. They stopped dumping steel. And I saved our steel mills by having that. We saved it. We saved our steel. Now, what was left, because we've lost so much, but there are certain companies you have to have. There are certain things you have to have. Steel, you have to have. If you go to war...
People are betting that your policies are going to drive up debt, they're going to drive up inflation, so they're going to drive up interest rates. Are the investors wrong?
Yeah, I had 4 years no inflation. I had 4 years no inflation.
But that was when you had much...
I had 4 years. It's better than that. And Biden, who has no idea where the hell he is, okay? Biden went 2 years with no inflation because he inherited from me. And then they started spending money like drunken sailors. What does the Wall Street Journal know? I'm meeting with them tomorrow. What does the Wall Street Journal know? They've been wrong about everything. So have you, by the way. You've been wrong about
You're trying to turn this. You've
been wrong about
you're trying to turn this into debate. There are business people.
But you're wrong. You've been wrong. You've been wrong all your life on this stuff. How about this? Gavin Newsom, he's the governor of California.
Newsom.
He signed Newsom, I call him.
Yeah. But do you think?
No, he corrected me. He corrected me. I said, that's the first time I've been corrected.
There are CEOs out here. If they said those sort of things about a rival CEO, they'd be sacked. Do you think it's fine for a president?
But they don't have to survive like me. They don't have to go through what I have to go through. There has never been a president that's been treated like me, so I have to fight my own way.
Well, you made a very good job of.
He signed a bill in California 2 days ago that you don't even have the right to ask a person for voter ID. And if you ask a person for voter ID, of course you have to show voter ID. The only reason you wouldn't do it because they want to cheat. The bill says you cannot, it's against the law for you to ask a person, may I please see your voter ID when he votes? What is our country coming to?
Well, you've given us a tour d'horizon of where that country might be going to. Thank you very much,
Thank you
President
very
Trump.
much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the conversation.
Those are some of the greatest hits, right? And guys, I absolutely recommend that you watch that entire sit down because it's absolutely fantastic. I mean, here's the funny thing. The same people that tell you that Donald Trump playing music and dancing at a town hall means that he's cognitively finished, he's the next Joe Biden, they're not going to talk about this interview. They're not even going to mention it, right? Donald Trump goes and talks to a group that is openly hostile to his economic vision, and he ends up with a freaking standing ovation, right? I'm telling you, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, they are not even playing the same game. They might be playing the same game, but they're definitely not playing by the same rules, right? And they're definitely not playing with the same level of skill. And guys, we have really only one last chance. We've got to defeat this psyop. And I really do believe that the only way to cure our poor, propagandized, TDS suffering fellow citizens, the only way to cure them, man, is to give them 4 more years of a successful and prosperous Donald Trump presidency. It is the only way to cure them. We've got to do it for them. But that's all I got, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you haven't already, be a part of our growth. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. I'll see you in the next one.